Money and baseball just go together. There's all guaranteed contracts. You get your money no matter how poorly you play. And for some players like Giancarlo Stanton, for example, now get paid over $300 million to exclusively play designated hitter, which means they have 3 or 4 at-bats a game and don't even have to play the field. So with that being said, I'm going to have every position rundown of the most overpaid players, and it's going to be funny. It made me laugh, honestly, and let's get into it. Let's start with the catcher position. So our man behind the plate is going to be Russell Martin, who signed a 5-year, $82 million deal in 2015 with the Toronto Blue Jays. As you can see by his stats, he has yet to hit over 240 in a season. His batting stats just keep declining every year. He didn't even hit over 200 this year, and the Blue Jays are still stuck paying this guy next year over $20 million. Seems like a terrible situation to be in. I hate to say it about Russell Martin because he did play for my favorite team, the Yankees, for a little bit. He was always a good player. He's always good behind the plate, knows how to frame pitches, but would you want to pay this guy 5 years, $82 million? I mean, I don't think so. He's definitely older now. He's in his 30s. He'll be 36 next year. The Blue Jays are wrapped up in that bad contract for one more season, but compared to other contracts we're going to see on this list, I'm sure Toronto regrets it overall. At first base, this one hurts to say because the man is definitely a future Hall of Famer. Former Triple Crown winner, it's Miguel Cabrera of the Detroit Tigers, who signed an 8-year, $280 million extension in 2016, which at the time didn't seem too bad, but based off how his seasons have went the last 3 years, definitely a regret on Detroit's part. They're definitely a rebuilding team now. They thought they can continue to win. It never happened. Now they're definitely a rebuilding team, so they have to pay this man all the way up until 2025, where he'll be 42 years old. You know, in 2016, he did have a good year, hit 318 with 38 home runs and 108 RBIs, and you know, did play decent defense for whatever he played. But no, I mean, he's owed a lot more money for the next 5-6 years. Definitely a contract that Detroit does not want to be in right now. And you know, Miguel Cabrera has always been a great hitter, but the injuries have really hampered him the last couple of years. Only played 38 games last year, 130 the year before, and his power numbers have drastically gone down as well. In 2017, only hit 16 home runs. Nearly played a full season. He missed 32 games, but definitely alarming, and he's not going to be the guy that they thought they signed 2 years ago, but it is what it is at this point. He'll be 36 next year in April. It kind of reminds me of the Alex Rodriguez situation with the Yankees when he signed that big extension. They'll be paying him till he's 42, and it's kind of like a contract we'll see later on this list, but that guy's still playing as well. At second base, a guy whose career took a weird turn this year after testing positive for PEDs, it's Robinson Cano. He signed a 10-year, $240 million deal in 2014 as a 31-year-old. Left the New York Yankees, who offered him a pretty decent contract themselves, but chased the money and went to Seattle. So it's a weird situation, as I said. This season missed a lot of games due to his suspension. He did hit 303 with 10 home runs and 50 RBIs. He seems like a guy that when he's on the field, he does produce. But is he worth the money they're paying him? Definitely not. They have to pay him up until he's 40 years old, where they'll be owing him $24 million that season. They have a lot more years left in his contract. The Mariners are mainly a young team. Not sure if they want to keep Cano around, but I'm not sure if they have any other choice at this point. Cano is definitely one of the above average second basemen in this league, but definitely not someone you want to pay $240 million to, especially during the later years of his career and coming off a PED suspension as well. At shortstop, this guy was once hands down the best player at his position, a player that I really adored as a kid, but has been derailed by injuries and all sorts of stuff like that. After his trade to Toronto, was never really the same player. It's Troy Tulowitzki, who signed a 10-year, $158 million extension with Colorado back in 2011. He was 26 years old at the time, so it doesn't make it look as bad, but after being traded to Toronto, they'll have to pay him up until 2021, where he is owed $15 million that season. He becomes an unrestricted free agent at the age of 37 in 2022. Tulowitzki, I would be surprised if his career lasted that long. He seems like the type of guy that might just retire before that time comes. Not sure how money hungry he is right now. But if you look at his last 3 years in Toronto, they have not been pretty at all. I mean, 2016, that was his best season where he hit .254, 24 home runs, and 79 RBIs. Did only play 131 games. I mean, Tulowitzki's always had issues with playing full seasons. They did trade for him at a time when Toronto was all in to win a World Series. Didn't happen, of course, but it's a trade that they'll definitely regret now because Tulowitzki did not play a game last year. You could see 2018 is left off of the stat sheet. There's another player on here that did not play at all last year. It's sad to see because I still like Tulowitzki. He was always exciting to watch in Colorado. Hopefully he gets back to the diamond one day, but I wouldn't be counting on it. And seems like the type of guy that might call it quits soon because of his injury history. At third base, a player who was once the Tampa Bay Rays franchise player, it's Evan Longoria, was traded during the offseason last year in a surprising move to go to the San Francisco Giants in a foolish effort by the organization to think they had a chance of competing after trading for an old Andrew McCutchen and an older Evan Longoria. Now they are stuck with him for 6 years, $100 million. They have to pay him up until 2023, where he'll be 37 years old. And you can already see the decline in Longoria's career. If you look at his last 3 seasons, the home runs have gone down. He missed games this year with an injury. He broke his hand back in June. He was supposed to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Played 125 games total. He's not the same defender he used to be, and definitely not the kind of guy that deserves the contract he has right now. But you know what? I'm not going to hate the players for this. It's mostly the organization's fault, so congrats to Longoria for getting his money. But he's not the same player he was back in Tampa where he was amazing. I mean, he was great. As I said, I'm a Yankee fan. I used to watch him a lot. He used to kill my team. Longoria is a terrific player, but at this point in his career, not the kind of guy you want to be paying that kind of money to. In left field, we're going to have Yoenis Cespedes. It's funny how fast things change with Yoenis. After being traded from Detroit to New York in the 2015 season, when he pretty much brought the Mets to the World Series that year. They didn't win, of course, but was a huge part of that team. The Mets were in a position where they had to re-sign him last season. In 2017. Signed a 4-year, $110 million extension with the Mets. The Mets are pretty much forced to pay him $29 million up until 2020. A contract that is way too much for a guy who does not play a lot of games. His games have gone down every year. 132 games in 2016, 81 in 2017, and then 38 last season. Last year, I think he had heel surgery, maybe on both heels or something like that. It was weird. He missed time, came back for maybe 1 game, and then they announced he was out for the season after that 1 game. So very weird how Cespedes' season went down last year. But the Mets never seem like they do well in free agency anyway. This is why the Mets don't like to spend a lot of money, because they get put in situations like this. Now they're forced to pay Yoenis until he's 34, and definitely a situation you don't want to be in right now. Cespedes definitely has issues with playing too much golf, and some people say he doesn't take the game serious enough. But we'll see if he's back next year. His surgeries on his heels were supposed to be pretty serious, so I'm not sure how much this will affect him. There is a chance he misses some of the season next year as well, so he won't be off to a good start in 2019 potentially. Definitely a move the Mets regret right now, but after what he did in 2015, he basically forced the franchise's hand to hand him a big deal like that. In center field, we're going to have Jacoby Ellsbury of my Yankees. Signed a 7-year, $153 million deal in the offseason in 2014. The Yankees are forced to pay him until he's 37 years old, until 2021. This guy did not play a game last year. It was weird. After spring training, I think towards the end of spring training, they announced he had a hip injury or something like that. He wasn't supposed to miss that much time. It was maybe a month at first. Then the month went by. You didn't really hear about Ellsbury. Then towards the middle of the season, it was announced that he was done for the year. I'm not sure what's going to happen with him in the future. I'm sure he'll still be on the roster based off his contract, but definitely a disappointing Yankee career so far for Ellsbury. It didn't start off so bad. He's definitely not played up to his potential, but did have 16 home runs his first year, hit over 270. Since then has really declined and has basically been an average outfielder at best. But still, he's making $153 million. Can't blame the guy. It sucks that he's still rostered, but it is what it is, and hopefully he does find a way to get on the field next year. In right field, we're going to have Jayson Heyward, who I always thought was one of the most overrated players in baseball. Not sure what the appeal is with Heyward. I remember when he came up with Atlanta, he was a big prospect, hit a home run in his first at-bat, all that stuff. There was a lot of hype around him, but never really lived up to it completely. He did sign an 8-year, $184 million contract in 2016 with Chicago. Now, Chicago did go on to win a World Series, obviously, but not sure if they want to be tied up in this contract all the way up until 2023, where he will be owed $22 million as a 33-year-old, and a guy who's not even producing that much right now. With the Cardinals in his final year of the contract, he had 13 home runs, hit over 290, 60 RBIs, nothing fantastic. Did play good defense. I'm pretty sure he won a Gold Glove for Chicago, but hitting-wise has been nothing great at all. Hit 230 in his first season with Chicago, hit 259 the next year, then hit 270 last year, but only 8 home runs. So his average is trending upwards. His power is not really going anywhere. His highest home runs in the last 4 years is 13. Really, he's only had one good year in the MLB, so I'm not sure why Chicago wanted to pay him this much money, but right now it's looking pretty foolish. Maybe he changes his game. I still think he has potential. He's definitely not like a hopeless cause, but Heyward needs to figure it out. I mean, he doesn't really have to because he's going to get paid anyway, but for Chicago Cubs fans' purposes and for the organization, they would like him to get better and play up to that contract, but right now it's not looking like it. Definitely looking like a bad decision, and they might be stuck with him in right field until 2023, so we'll see what happens with that. At DH, we have another guy who is a no-doubt Hall of Famer, but is in a contract that I'm sure he's loving right now. It's Albert Pujols, who in 2012 signed a 10-year, $240 million deal. A shocking move to move on from his career-long team, the St. Louis Cardinals. And since going to LA, he hasn't been that bad. He has put up good numbers for the most part. He did miss some games because of foot injuries, but for the most part, he's put up good numbers, statistically speaking, while hitting, but really has been a DH for most of the time. He rarely plays first base at this point. He's really just an overpaid guy who can barely run and, will hit you some home runs. He does put up some good RBI numbers, gets on base a decent amount, but even just 2 years ago he had 119 RBIs, followed that with 101 RBIs, missed a lot of games last year with an injury, but Pujols is going to be paid up until 2021, I believe, where he'll be making a lot of money. So, when you sign a guy to a $240 million deal at the age of 32, you kind of expect that stuff to happen, but I guess the Angels really wanted him, and pair him with Mike Trout. It wasn't a bad move at all. But at the time when they signed him, Mike Trout wasn't really a thing yet, so I guess that all just worked out perfectly for them. But Pujols will be in the middle of the Angels lineup for the next few years at least, and he'll be getting a lot of money doing it. He'll just be breaking records and doing his thing, and still making a lot of money. So good for Pujols, and I guess they'll sell more tickets because the more he breaks records, the more fans will want to see it, and he'll continue to get paid up until 2021. At starting pitcher, another San Francisco Giant. This one is Johnny Cueto, who signed a 6-year, $130 million deal in 2016. Missed a lot of games last year due to injury. The year before that had a 4.5 ERA, did not look good at all. But in 2016, he was a good pitcher. He was definitely living up to that contract, went 18-5 with a 2.79 ERA. But after that, kind of fell off last year, and then this year had the injury issues. Did have a decent ERA, and he was pitching decently for the Giants in 9 games, but the downside is they have to pay him up until 2021, where they'll pay him, I think, $21 million, and it's a contract that they probably don't want to be in right now. They definitely should be a rebuilding team in the next few years. I'm not sure if they're going to trade Cueto at the trade deadline next year. Not sure if anyone's even going to want him. Cueto's always been a good pitcher, but health has always been a concern, even in the Cincinnati days. Wasn't the most durable pitcher out there, but when he's right, he's still a good pitcher. So I think it really depends if he's healthy, and maybe the Giants can unload his contract to a contender next July. We'll see what happens with him. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a contract you don't want to be in right now if you're San Fran and a rebuilding franchise. After a pretty poor performance in the World Series in 2017, Yu Darvish was signed to the Chicago Cubs to a 6-year, $126 million deal in 2018. Last season, did not play much. He only pitched 8 games, had an ERA near 5. He was injured halfway through the year. And this could be one of those contracts that might come back to bite them in a bad way. If you look at Yu Darvish's stats, he started off well his rookie year, I think it was 2013. But since then, his ERA just kept going up and up and up. And 2017 with the Dodgers, a contract year, of course, had a 3.44 ERA. But, also had a 4.01 that season when he was with the Rangers. So had a middling 3-point-something ERA that year. But it was enough for him to make that contract $126 million. Really what it comes down to Darvish is his health. He's really not that bad of a pitcher. He does have some really good stuff, but hasn't really been that consistent over his career. Never really stays healthy for a full season. And to pay a guy like that who's going to be 36 when his contract's up in 2023, that is a lot to put into a player like Yu Darvish. I mean, if I was a GM, I probably would have stayed away from him, but the Cubs are a win-now team. We get that, and as long as Darvish can stay healthy for October, maybe it'll be worth the investment. But based off what we saw last year, the playoff Cubs did not have Yu Darvish at their disposal, and it did not look like a good move last year at all. So hopefully in the future for them it pays off, but as of right now, it was not looking like a good signing one bit. Up next is another guy, kind of like Jayson Heyward for me. I never really saw the appeal with Jordan Zimmermann. He was a decent pitcher for the Nationals, but wasn't anything special. Once he got to Detroit in 2016, he really just was awful. I mean, if he wasn't making that kind of money, he wouldn't be in the league anymore. He signed a 5-year, $110 million contract with Detroit in 2016. Came in, had a 4.87 ERA in his first year, 19 games. Had an ERA over 6 the next year, and then had a 4.5 last year. So he's not getting any younger. He'll be making $25 million when he's 34 years old with Detroit. That's in 2020. As I said before, Detroit is a rebuilding team, but it's not like anyone even is going to want Jordan Zimmermann, I would imagine. So I'm not sure what they're going to be able to do with him. I guess they're stuck with that contract, and he'll be on the team for the next couple of years, and they'll just have to ride it out, because I'm pretty sure you really can't do anything with him right now. I mean, I don't know what team's going to want a guy with a 4.5 ERA who doesn't have any special stuff or anything like that. So I think the Tigers are screwed with this one. There's really no way of getting out of it. And, as I said, I never really liked Zimmermann, even in his Nationals days. I just thought it was a dumb signing from the beginning, and I kind of left when it happened. I was like, yeah, have fun paying this guy, for 5 years and over $100 million. And a few years later, it's come back to bite them in the ass. So we'll see what happens with Jordan Zimmermann. I highly doubt he turns it around, but the Tigers look like they made a pretty bad move with that signing. Up next is a guy who's had a pretty interesting career. I believe he's tossed a couple of no-hitters, but has definitely been hampered by injuries in recent years. It's Homer Bailey with the Cincinnati Reds, who signed a 6-year, $110 million deal. In 2014, it was an extension with Cincinnati. They have to pay him up until 2020, where he'll be making $25 million that season. In 2015 and 2016, he only played a combined 8 games. Not what you want to see, but really in 2013, 2014, he was putting up good numbers. As I said, I think he pitched a no-hitter, maybe 2 of them. But then coming back, I mean, he really has been horrible. I think he's had a couple of Tommy John surgeries, has had ERAs in the 6s the last 3 seasons, and it just has not been pretty at all for Homer Bailey. He was moved into the bullpen last season. I'm not sure how that went based off his stats. I really don't think it went well. He went 1-14 last year. I mean, that's shocking to see. But yeah, I mean, it's really unbelievable what's happened with him. I remember watching him when I was younger, and he had really good stuff, and he looked like a guy with a lot of potential. Just seems like a career that was ruined by injuries, and the Reds signed him at the very wrong time. And for Homer Bailey, good for him. He got his money and then got hurt after it, but just an unfortunate situation. But with the guaranteed contracts, I mean, they're locked into him till 2020, as I said. So for Homer Bailey, I mean, you just got to show up and pitch, and maybe things get better for him as he gets more time away from that Tommy John surgery, but we'll see what happens in the future. And our last player here is a person that, I personally never really saw the appeal as well. Jeff Samardzija, who used to play for the Cubs, went to the White Sox. I think he played for the Athletics as well for a season, maybe half a season. Coming off a season where he had an ERA over 6 in 10 games pitched, went 1-5 as well. The year before that had a 4.4 ERA. The year before that had a 3.81, and then with Chicago in 32 games and an ERA near 5. I mean, Samardzija's always had pretty decent stuff. I know he has a good fastball and whatnot, but he has never been that good of a pitcher. I mean, maybe he had a year in Chicago with the Cubs where he was a good pitcher, but for the most part, definitely not the kind of guy I would sign for $90 million. The Giants are going to pay him $18 million in 2020 when he's 35 years old. He's a guy, he's an innings eater. I mean, it's always nice to have, but once again, with the Giants, it's a young team. They should rebuild. Not sure what having Samardzija in their rotation is going to do positively, but maybe for the contract reasons, they keep throwing him out there. I'm really not sure what's going to happen, but it's definitely something the Giants should regret right now. And I really didn't get it when it happened, and right now it's looking even worse than I thought it would be. So a 6 ERA, definitely not what you want, and maybe things get better for him. Maybe he gets over his injuries and whatnot, but right now, not looking good for Jeff Samardzija or the Giants on that part. So that'll be it for this video. If you guys liked it, of course, leave a like. If you want me to do this kind of video for like the NFL or for the NBA, I think NBA would be kind of interesting because there are some ridiculous ass contracts nowadays with the salary cap going up. But maybe I'll do an NBA video or something like that. So just let me know in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed the video, and I'll do another one. So thanks, guys.